Good evening and welcome to the City Council meeting for August 1st. We'll call this meeting to order and note that all present. Oh, Dan's over here. Oh.
I love that.
Now we'll call this meeting to order and note that all council are present. We don't have an invocation tonight. I was thinking that if you are one who prays, I would be praying for a community that respects different opinions but still respects people as individuals, so I would ask you to consider that. We will do a Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll ask Woody to start us off tonight, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We kind of take that pledge for granted, especially those of us who grew up doing it every day in school. But I think it's still a very important thing for us to do, particularly as we find a divided country, and there's ways that, for the most part, the things that we agree on certainly overshadow those that we don't. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, we have a couple of presentations. The first one is from Panhandle Area Council, and I would welcome Wally Jacobson to come up and present that. Welcome, Wally.
Thank you. Good evening, Council and Mayor. I see many of you are former PAC board members, so I feel like I'm amongst friends. Let me just jump into it. Double click doesn't seem to, there we go. So again, my name's Wally Jacobson, the Executive Director of Panhandle Area Council. I have been for 8 years, and I apologize I haven't been here for 2 years. But I wanted to kind of give you guys a brief update of what we've been up to for the last 2 years. And with that, I'll just click through this. I think most of you realize we're an economic development organization. We primarily serve the 5 northern counties, a 501c4 nonprofit. Also, perhaps you might notice by that date on there, we just passed our 50 years in business. And I think we had some of the original founders of PAC were, I think, from the city of Coeur d'Alene and Sandpoint. We basically cover 3 areas. I'm going to go briefly over those because Mr. Kennedy told me to keep it short tonight, so I got to hustle through it. We cover business development, economic development planning, and community development. And I'm going to jump into economic development. That's basically headed up by Nancy Maybell. Nancy's still with us. We're still doing the comprehensive economic development strategy for the 5 northern counties. It's primarily an overall strategy that we work on. We receive a grant from EDA. We work with the other economic development organizations in the area to put that strategy together. It's kind of a 50-foot or 50,000 square or 50,000 foot level view of what we're trying to do. So we just completed that, and then we update it every 3 years. Nancy's group has been working basically all over the 5 northern counties. You can see we're up in Plummer, Panhandle Village, City of Clark Fork. It's interesting, as these small communities are growing, that's where a lot of our assistance is going. For you that don't know, that I was with PAC in 1986. So primarily back then, a lot of our effort was right here in Coeur d'Alene and in Post Falls in those days. But as the cities have gotten stronger and economically more viable, we've moved out. And it's helping those communities. Jump into the business development side. We run a startup hub incubator out at PAC. We've got 8,000 square feet. We still lease out space. We've got 8 units. These are the list of the companies that we currently have out there. It's been pretty consistent. I think it's the same group you saw from 2 years ago. We did add Southwest Engineering out there. Basically, they're startups or early stage companies that are trying to get a place that's fairly reasonably priced, and we provide them support. Some of these tenants are also some of our loan clients. One of those in particular, GNS, they basically make an LED light system for aviation. So their product was developed out at PAC, sold at PAC, and then the pandemic hit, couldn't get parts. They're up and running, and so that product now is in 3 commercial airlines and in the military. It's basically an LED light, so if the lights go out in the cockpit, they've got some lights there. Just wanted to throw Empire out there. We own that as PAC. It was a community program, community effort. We're still making our loan payments, so we're still up to date. Just keeping those guys out there. We lease that building to them. Business loans. This is where we've really been focusing in the last couple of years, building that team. Initially, when I started with PAC 8 years ago, we had a half part-time person that was in there. We offer programs for small businesses. One of them is the SBA 504 program for commercial real estate primarily. And then we have a number of revolving loan funds for gap financing. This has really taken off as interest rates have increased. 2 years ago, 3%. Banks didn't really need to partner with PAC. As rates go up to 8.5% prime now, we're finding a lot more partners. Banks are coming to partner with PAC for those businesses. Basically, the bank takes part of the loan, they get in a first lien position, PAC is in a second lien position. The bank feels better about the whole deal and are willing to proceed if PAC is there as a partner. That area, that's really picked up as interest rates have gone up. And then there's kind of a graphic of where we've been here in the last couple of years. You can see 2019, 20, interest rates are pretty low. But as interest rates started to creep up, 21, 22, our volume increased. We also have been trying to build our loan team. We started out with 1 full-time person in 2019. We're up to 4 people. We offer loans, the revolving loan fund, and the SBA program. So we're seeing a lot of activity there. But what's interesting is our 504 activity is probably the same as it was last year. But across the country, the 504 program has dropped 50% because of interest rate hikes. But PAC has been able to maintain our level of activity here. I really wanted to share with you, I don't think we had this 2 years ago, but back in fiscal year, this is almost 18 months ago, PAC is a member of the Economic Development Districts of Idaho. There are 5 organizations like ours. We saw that the state of Idaho was going to get close to $56 million through the Small Business Credit Initiative Program through U.S. Treasury. So PAC put in a proposal to the state to develop a statewide revolving loan fund for $26 million. That was approved by the legislature for fiscal year 21 or 22 and 23. And so we were able to carve out for North Idaho $4.17 million. And then PAC also covers Southwest Idaho, which is an interesting story. They don't have a district down there, so we're covering part of that, and so is the Region 4 in Twin Falls. But anyway, those funds are available to lend out. Now our task is to get that money out because we've got a 2-year window to get the first tranche out. So that's exciting news there. And then I want to drop just briefly in the summary of PAC. I think Mayor Hammond, this has probably changed since you were there several years ago. But this last year, we're typically about $1.2 million in our budget. This year, we're at just a little over $1 million. We're staying ahead. We're doing all right these days. You can see in 2019, revenues were less than expenses. If we turn that around, where our revenues are greater than expenses, which is always a good thing. This is where I wanted to kind of show you folks where our revenue comes from. You can see on the left bar is the big 407. It's kind of skewed because a lot of that, there were some funds that were from COVID, EDA. But primarily it's contract services, leasing income, SBA loan origination fees, interest that we earn, loan fund administration fees, a rental. We rent the incubator rental, and so we also rent to Empire that building. But membership dues are about $31,000. PAC has pretty much kept that number over the last 8 years, and that's basically you folks supporting PAC with your membership. We still have all 5 counties are members of PAC. I think City of Coeur d'Alene is like $5,500 as your membership. And we appreciate those funds because they're hard dollars. I can use those dollars to match other funds. And I appreciate that. Also, I appreciate the fact that Troy is on our board. We worked him pretty hard this last week. He had to review 2 loans. So PAC got almost $5 million worth of loans approved in the last 5 days. And so that's kind of PAC in a nutshell, quickly as I could.
Thank you for the quick and thorough presentation. Are there questions? Woody?
How long do startups start up?
How long do startups start up?
How long do they last there?
Well, when you look at the 1986 plan for the incubator out there, we assumed they would be in and out in 2 years.
Oh, really?
No, it's not going to happen.
No.
It's 6, 8 years. I mean, we had one client out there for almost 10 years. But again, you want them to get up and running, and then you want them to stabilize, and then eventually some of them stay out there too long because they got a good deal. So we encourage them to move on. But usually I would say it's a 6-year window you're looking at.
I remember a brewery early on before it was cool.
Yep, there's Bombastic Brewery still out there. We had Castaway Winery. They were out there for several years. They've moved on. North Idaho Cider was out there for a number of years.
I remember the animal cremation thing.
We don't do those anymore.
Oh, you don't do those?
There was a nasty habit of dropping off product on the driveway and leaving. So we quit that.
But it was a good service, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. It was free. You just drive by and leave it there.
Oh, no.
That's
I guess I didn't
How's it
picture it
slide?
that way. I
Oh,
thought-
no. I wasn't there.
ceremony.
I just heard the stories.
Sorry I brought it up.
Christie?
Just a comment, great presentation. Appreciate that you come to council and share all that with us. I remember Panhandle Area Council from when I was on the school board back in the 2000s, and I can't tell you what property it was or what building, but I remember we turned to you for funding, and it was a great relationship. And so I've always appreciated what you bring to this community, and it looks like you're still at it all these years later.
Well, and we're always trying to find our niche, and I appreciate that. I think it was the school district property on 4th Street might have been
There you go.
some of that.
We've done, I have to tell you, my brother and I, we've done 2 loans with you guys through SBA as we become big restaurant guys and go, nah, let's just go back to being a regular restaurant guys. But you guys were always there and very helpful in the loans and understanding the game, the game plan.
And that's part of what we try to do, especially on the commercial loan side, because not everybody does a commercial loan. We might buy a house or two. You're used to buying a house, but a commercial loan is pretty different.
Yeah.
So we try to get the expertise in-house, which has been a challenge because the banks and the credit unions are also looking for that same talent. But that's one of our keys, is trying to provide that technical assistance to folks that have never gone through this process before.
Yeah, it was very guiding, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Wally.
You bet.
I want to share with you that I very much appreciate the work of PAC. Although the city may not use it as much as we used to, I think it's still very important for our regional economic development and also providing some stability for the small businesses. And really, the small businesses are where we need to provide that support. That's what most business is small business. Thank you, Wally.
Exactly. You bet. Thank you.
We also have a presentation from the Coeur d'Alene Economic Development Council presented by Jenny Gilliam. Welcome, Jenny.
Thanks, Wally. Gonna have to scroll it. I see. So I'm Jenny Gilliam. I'm the president and CEO of the Coeur d'Alene Area Economic Development Corporation. I need this cough drop because my allergies are having an absolute war with me. Okay. So our vision has stayed the same since 1987. We want to build a thriving economy and a good employment base in Kootenai County. We continue to collaboratively advance job growth and prosperity. Okay. And I'm going to have to actually look at this before I can scroll, I guess. So our main objectives is to foster industry diversification in the area, and that includes helping existing companies already, as well as focusing on emerging industry sectors in the area to continue to grow them. And then we, of course, want to advance the workforce in the area so that they match what the businesses need in the region. And then we always have been engaged in current community challenges. One of the things that we are focused on, of course, is housing, and that is a direct response from the companies that are here already, asking us and telling us that they can't find housing for their workforce. Wally mentioned Empire. As a matter of fact, this morning at our meeting, he said they have 4 college students from ISU that are thinking about coming here to intern, and it hasn't happened yet because they need housing. And so we need them here because not just Empire, but a lot of our companies need assistance. So because we have a short time, I would just wanted to highlight some things. Our growth regional product for our region has grown at the same rate as the state, which is a good thing. Okay, as you can see that, hold on. Okay. Average wages and median household income has also gone up in the area. Little qualifier, of course, this has gone up, but it has not kept up with the housing prices in the region. We're not saying that we're the only one that contributed to this, because there's a lot of factors that contributed to the growth in wages, but we know that our focus on bringing high-wage jobs into the area makes a difference as far as driving the economy up. Okay. Done. Some of our I know that a lot of the time we're in the news for bringing new company into the area, but a large portion of what we do is helping existing companies. The I-90 Aerospace Conference and Expo that we put on with Eastern Washington is a direct link to helping existing manufacturing companies already in our area. We wanted to localize the supply chain a little bit more. We wanted them to have a venue to be able to hear about the state of the art in the area, and we wanted them to connect with each other. A prime example of that is when Continuous Composites and Acrofab partnered together to help build masks for the hospitals during COVID. And that's just that is like an outgrowth of what you're doing at I-90. We also attend the SHOT Show, and out of my head right now, I can't remember what the SHOT stands for, but it's the outdoor trade show. And we have a lot of companies that attend that. We visit them there. It's easier to visit them all there. And then the state of Idaho has a reception for all the Idaho companies. Again, the objective is to get them to connect and to get them to localize the supply chain within Idaho. I had already mentioned that housing and affordability availability is a direct response from our existing companies, as well as the talent pipeline management program that we're running. That's the workforce program that we are running. Okay. To go back to the front page, okay, since this is just 15 to 22, our organization has helped 67 companies. We actually assisted about 200 plus, but 67 created jobs. They created 3,500 direct jobs, and it's putting in about 116 to 182 million in payroll in our region, 250 million in capital for the entire region, and the companies that are actually already operating, because that 253 million capital includes companies that are either still building or about to build. But the 1.7 million in annual tax revenue that you see, those are the companies that already exist that are contributing. So when all the companies are operating, that number is actually bigger. Since 1987, it's been about 9,000 direct jobs, 150 plus companies, about 468 million annual payroll, and about 760 million in capital investment into our region since 1987. Let me see what else. One of the key things we're doing, of course, is we continue to partner with our different organizations. As a matter of fact, today we are in the running for it's called with EDA. They built an economic recovery core. We submitted an application jointly with GSI. 3 of our projects made the second round. So 600 were submitted, 150 made the second round. So we're in that second round, and then 100 will be chosen out of that 150, and we had one of the interviews to make it to the third phase. So we think we're going to get at least one out of the 3. We are also working with Lakeside for a tech hub in the area. And so there's a lot of grants that are out right now with EDA, still coming from the CARES and the ARPA funds. And we're trying to take advantage and trying to bring some of those tax dollars that we all paid out back into our region. Okay, and those are the highlights that I think I wanted to talk to you guys about. So any questions?
Questions?
Woody's up,
Woody?
seniority.
Let me understand. So PAC is about the money, and you
Yes.
guys are kind of the information.
So we work together on a regular basis. They have funds available for some of these businesses. So we actually, like Empire was working with both of us when they first came to the region. We have other companies, can't think of some of them. Yeah. Dauntless Air, also at the airport, so we're working with both of them.
Okay.
Some of them are smaller companies, some of them are bigger companies.
You
Yeah.
guys both speak the same language, it sounds like.
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely. Actually, Wally's on my board.
I'm sorry.
And then we partner,
Just
we
kidding,
work
Wally.
with Nancy on a lot of the different SEDS and different planning programs that PAC has.
All right, thank you.
Kiki?
Ginny, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciated working with you during the Housing and Growth Issues Partnership, and you were a partner in the first survey. Is your board giving you direction for any specific plans to move forward projects with anyone else or on your own in that housing arena?
On the housing, that was just one of those, remember, one of our objectives is to always be involved in community challenges. So since that is one of the biggest challenge we have right now, and since everything is linked, in a sense, we can't do our job well as far as bringing jobs if they don't have a place to stay. So the board is very much in support of making sure that we get everything we possibly can as far as helping on the housing front. We are helping fund the update. Remember the study that we did in 21? Okay, and we're doing an update to that, and it should be available by August of this year. One of the reasons we wanted to do that was because you guys are familiar that the COVID kind of sent some anomalies as far as trends and statistics. We wanted to make sure that the numbers we were seeing were still consistent, and some of them are still consistent. Some of them, I think it just varies a little bit, but not a whole lot. And it's still Dr. Peterson at University of Idaho and his grad students that are, different set of grad students that are working on it, on the project.
Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ginny, thank you for coming. I do
Thank you.
appreciate it. We give you money every year, and
Yes.
I don't know what it is. It's 40,000, something like that. And so one of the things I've mentioned every budget year is it would be nice if you guys would show up and give us the dog and pony show and give us all the information. So I appreciate that you're here. In your results, I have a couple questions. So in your results, you list the years from 2015 to 2022, which is a 7-year span. Do you have any data for just recently, like last year?
I think we had 4 companies last year. Can't remember off the head. We have like a spreadsheet that has all of it. So 4 companies, I believe, last year. Rathdrum and Post Falls is where they settled. A lot of it has to do with just the land that's available. But like I tell everybody when this organization was formed is because we know that we were all interrelated. We all don't stop at the border, right? I know I don't stop at the border. I live in Coeur d'Alene, and I visit all the different communities.
Cool. So when you mentioned something about with the affordable housing thing, jobs, the companies are going to come here and they need to find places for their workers
Correct.
to live. Do you focus on any companies that are going to come here for people who already live here?
Yes, actually, we're working with Empire.
Okay.
We're working with the hospital. My goodness. Off the top of my head, I think we've worked with ATC, okay, Advanced Thermal Composites, also needs some workers. Unitech, a lot of them are, actually, a lot of the companies that we're working with as far as housing are already here. The ones that are coming that we're working on, they ask about it, but they don't seem to be as concerned at the moment. Because their projects are usually, the attraction projects are about 2 years out normally. So I think they probably feel like that things will adjust a little bit. It's really our existing companies that are driving that housing project.
So but there are jobs coming here for people who already live here, who are looking to have those career-level jobs like you talked about.
There are
High-wage
definitely
jobs.
jobs available here already.
Excellent. Okay, so don't have to talk about this, but Hayden unfunded you.
I'm sorry, which
Hayden.
one? Hayden?
The city
Correct.
of Hayden. It was in the paper that they stopped funding you. Do you have any clue as to what that was about? I mean, I know you're reaching out to them. You said there's no borders. You're obviously, not going to discriminate against people who live in Hayden who need a job, but what the
Part
hell?
of it is at least when I was there, one of the things they continued to stress that we were already growing, and so they didn't see the value of funding an organization that was focused on, in a sense, growing the community. But what I tried to tell them is what we do today won't affect us until about 2 to 3 years from now. The success that we're all seeing right now was work from the previous 40 years. And so, and also think about it in terms of we are always growing as individuals. As a community, we also need to be continuously growing. There are always businesses that are going to go away, not because of anything else, but simply because they're going to go away. They've exhausted their lifespan, in a sense. So we always have to be growing to be replacing those. Plus, if we want to continue to improve the lives in our community, then we do need to grow.
Okay, but it just seems to me kind of weird because there's a return on investment here. And that's one of the things I look for when we're going to be, spending public money. We want to make sure that the
Right.
public's getting a benefit. Sounds like you're doing a benefit, you're doing a job, and it just seems, it's puzzling to me that that would happen. I'm sure it was disappointing to you more than puzzling, but
The truth is, it totally puzzled us as well, because
Yeah.
we gave them this same return on, we said, this is your return on investment. I said, I think there's a lot of entities that you give money to, cities, but they don't necessarily give you this kind of return on investment. And we gave that return on investment to them. We talked about that economic development is future work. It always is. If you think about in '87, if our community leaders didn't think that it was worthwhile to start Jobs Plus, we may all not be here. We may still be a little beautiful community by the lake, because there are certainly a lot of beautiful communities by the lake that aren't accessible
Well,
as Coeur d'Alene.
I thank you for that, and I thank you for coming, and I
Yeah.
hope you show up more often and share us the good news that you are
Absolutely.
doing.
I would love to do that. Okay?
Mr. Mayor, just a quick point. The investment to Jobs Plus is $25,000. There's another group that's at the 40 level. We moved that down in the budget year when we thought that the pandemic would have a negative impact, and so that was 20,000, just to give a point of clarification.
Thank you, Troy.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, Ginny, I just want to add my appreciation for all these years of work well done and the impact that this organization has on this community. Again, like you said, if we hadn't done this, if the leadership back in the 80s hadn't realized the need, where would we be? And so as long as we're here in this leadership role, we're going to appreciate that return on investment and support you the way you've supported our community.
And thank you. And like I always tell everybody, it takes all of the communities, and it takes all of our nonprofits and all of our local businesses to really make us as successful as we are. So thank you for your continued support.
Thank you. Announcements from the council? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to remind people that on Thursday night, which is the 3rd of August, here in the library community room at 5:30 will be a presentation by KMPO about the Transportation Management Center, which is a hot topic out there if you've gone to social media. So this would be the place where you want to be Thursday at 5:30, and you'll hear from the KMPO and ITD and all those other people about traffic cameras if that is a concern.
Dan?
Well, I would just like to give a shout out to our folks in the video and sound booth. I happen to sit in the coveted Kennedy seat. It's called that because it's closest to the bathroom and the coffee pot, but you're at an angle here where you can't see too much. And so they got us all nice new monitors, and this one's a little oversized because my angle on the bow was really sharp there. But I could see, man, I can see all of the fine print, and so everybody up there, I appreciate that because frankly, it's good for the public business if we can read all of the fine print. So thank
Are
you.
you saying Kennedy never paid attention because he didn't have that? I think that's what he
I
just
didn't
said.
make any kind of a
Sure.
judgmental statement.
Yeah.
He
No,
would get
no.
up, I remember Mike would get up and he'd have to walk all the way over there. And I thought, is it me? But no, it's because you can't see that.
We should have,
You guys are having too much fun. I just have three quick things. One is, I was a juror at one of the Arts Current selections, and I think it's interesting that if you are interested in Arts Commission and what they do, you can talk with them about one of those programs and get involved in judging for some of our art. Fascinating process. I wanted to let you know I am going to do some comments about the city of Coeur d'Alene at the Aerospace Conference that Jenny was talking about that's coming up this month. So I will be talking about a little bit about city history and what goes on in our town. And the last thing is, I don't remember if I told you folks this, I've been bragging on it, but my son is playing Tully in Escape to Margaritaville, and he opens August 4th. And if you like Jimmy Buffett stuff, it's at Spokane Valley Summer Theater, and he is an awesome beach bum, so.
Okay.
Takes one to know one, you know.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to approve the consent calendar as presented, including Resolution 23058.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Will clerk take, yes,
I have a question on the
okay.
items in the consent calendar. So there's a lot of stuff in here, and a lot of it's like this, which is just way too tiny to read. And so I have a magnifying glass, and I went ahead and read some of it. And I do have a question, and I don't know if anyone on staff can ask. There was an item in here that struck me as rather curious. So, and this is in the consent calendar 3 times for the three development. There's an amendment to perform landscape work in each one of those. And at the bottom, it says this: the parties agree that the city has utilized substantial staff time to prepare this agreement. And therefore, the parties will agree that the fee for that substantial time will be reimbursed in the amount of $25. So the question I have is, which one of those things is true? So was it substantial time, or is it $25? And who is it we're paying $5 an hour for their substantial time? Is this one of these things that's like been lingering in here for decades and we just never bothered to adjust it? I know
That
it's-
is true.
Okay, so that's what it
And
is.
that would be Dennis Grant and myself who get $5 an hour.
So you guys are making $5. This is the substantial, is an engineer and a lawyer who are worth $5 an hour for the substantial Can we fix this? Can we adjust? I know that Renata's not here, but is this one of those fees that we can adjust? Because I think if you are spending substantial staff time, and that was thrice in here that happens, that maybe we can go ahead and up that fee, maybe to like
That-
$30 or
I
something?
think that is a fee that is in our fee schedule that can be adjusted.
Okay, I just wanted to point that out because it struck me, and it was like, I'm sure your time's worth more than that.
We may have to adjust the word substantial as
And
well.
that we could do that too.
I thought
Either
it was
way.
like 2 minutes, you know.
So, just thought I'd point that out. Thank you.
Thrice,
3 times. That means
Thrice.
means 3 times, Mr. Former School Teacher.
will the clerk take the roll, please?
Yeah.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
yes.
Evans. Yes. Miller. Aye. McEvers.
Yes.
We have 2 people wishing to make public comments. The first one is Russ McLean.
Hi, guys. It's Russell McLean. Last week, Maureen Dolan and Devin Weeks did my Nicole a real solid, wrote a real, I don't know how Devin shrunk my 10 million stories into one page, but there's a part about Mrs. Eisen, her 3rd grade teacher, changing her world, and which is true. And it was that we were reading
the wrong material for the way Nicole's brain worked. So Babar and Winnie the Pooh, they all got donated. And I came to the Coeur d'Alene Library, and the librarian took Nicole by the hand for an hour, maybe 2 hours, and went through and found the books that she really needed to be reading. So it wasn't Mrs. Eisen by herself, although she did give the direction. But your librarian didn't do anything wrong. I know what people say about this and that and everything like that, but they just turned Nicole into a scientist and really did a terrific job. And so it was just as much the library here that changed Nicole's world as it was Mrs. Eisen, plus 10 million other people. But I just want that on record that she didn't turn into a Democrat, she didn't turn into a lesbian, she turned into a scientist. And I'm grateful to your library.
Thank you, Russ.
What
And
a great story.
congratulations on your daughter's efforts. We're all very proud of her. Mike Kennedy?
Oh, he's here. We were talking about him.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I feel Mike Kennedy, I live in Bolivar Avenue, Coeur d'Alene. I feel compelled to defend my honor. It was where I sat, and the coffee and the bathroom are not unrelated matters as to why I sat there, Mr. English. And Councilman Gookin, if you'd like to promote and give more money to Jobs Plus, I'm all for that. The 40,000 number sounded great. That's the context and why I'm here tonight. I am the volunteer current board chair of the board of Jobs Plus, Coeur d'Alene Economic Development Corporation. And Ginny had the screen up. It didn't show the whole board of directors, but we have a very diverse group from all different companies, nonprofits, municipal organizations, and Dan, I'm really pleased you asked a question about Hayden because it's something that's on my mind as a board chairman. I think our board, our staff does a great job. I think our board needs to be a little more engaged in helping the municipalities understand that return on investment. Obviously, in the case of Hayden, there's a lot of things going on. There are people that have made the case, well, we're doing so well, we don't need economic development, and I would say that's understandable. The folks that deal with pressure from new traffic and new residents that can make some sense. But much of the work that we do involves assisting existing companies, not from necessarily a promotion or chamber of commerce perspective, but from a tackling the real issues perspective. When Kootenai Health has, many, many job openings that they can't fill, when Empire Airlines has people that want to hire as interns and need for the intellectual capacity of the organization and they can't get them housing, those are real issues. And so there's also some of the things that Jobs Plus and the CDA, EDC work on. So my message tonight is just thank you for continuing with the work. I think it's interesting, this morning we had a board meeting and I'm appreciative of Troy Tymason, who's been a longtime board member and a really wise and sage voice on these things, because you see the pendulum swing and you can see things come and go. We had two board members, one who was on the board from the very early time in the late 80s and another who just started. And so the questions that are there's a lot of history involved, but there's a lot of people that are your constituents and our neighbors who have no history, no recollection of that history, and they're in the question of what are you doing for me now? So having Ginny come and speak and give a little bit more discussion, I think our board will do more of this to both explain, bolster, and help the community understand what economic development is. I want to close with one thought. If you had the choice of problems, and you have a problem of growth or a problem of decline, I would encourage all of us watching and here to ask the cities in the Rust Belt which problem they would rather have. If they could choose growth or decline, they've had decline, and it is brutal. Talk about kids not staying where they are. It's not just because they can't afford housing, it's because there are no jobs, and they're in a community that is dying. And I don't want to pick on the Rust Belt, but it's a pretty clear example. What we see right now in Seattle and Portland and some of the difficulties they are having in governing themselves that can come from a lot of different reasons. We've got a pretty good problem here of growth. It's not something we can ignore. You've got to be working on it. All of you are. But I've used up my time. That's not the first time. Thank you all. That's why I came here to say. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
We have more presentations. We have one regarding approval of financing for library lighting. Adam, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm here tonight asking for the financing of two projects. First being the library lighting upgrade, and the second being the citywide access control of the card readers we use at all the major buildings and campuses. The library lighting upgrade would be converting all of the older technology that we have here at the library. There's a mixture of fluorescence and high-pressure sodium metal halides and stuff like that throughout the building, converting all of that to high-efficient LED lighting, which would, which would help with the energy consumption. It would help lower demand by 80,000 kilowatt hours with a annual savings of $6,000 in energy savings. That project costs $44,500. We have an approved rebate from Avista for $23,811, bringing the total cost down to $20,689. The second project would be the security upgrade. That one we are in need of because we're currently operating off of an obsolete server, and the company that provides that service has switched that service to a cloud-based service. So the server that we're operating on right now is no longer supported or backed by that company. So if that server were to go down, we would need, we would be forced to go to that cloud-based side of that system. And the way they keep us, or the way they encourage us to stay with them, is by offering a hardware buyback program. So the new hardware costs about 80% of the full retail, making it that much more affordable. And that retrofit costs $13,500. And that would come with an annual subscription of $6,300. I saw that I made a typo on the staff report. I think I had written $6,900. So I'm going to make that correction.
Questions?
Or just, well, one, would the, so the little white cards that we have for access, would that change then, or new cards
No,
or
no one
something?
would notice any difference. The system would still operate as it is. It's just the new era of the technology and the way the company and that software is gone. So everything would still be functional. No one really noticed the conversion, but we would be operating on a cloud-based service,
okay.
yeah.
Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would, this came to us in general services, and I wanted it put on the agenda because it's not a budgeted item. I don't disagree with it. I think it's good, but I did want to get more transparency. I also read this morning, CNN had a report that apparently the incandescent light bulb ban is now in effect. And that, and do you know about this?
Yes, so one of the projects, the evidence building over at the PD, we were swapping out the 8-foot fluorescents, and those are almost not available, or are not available any longer, so we're seeking LED alternatives to retrofit that building as well. So LED is kind of the new era, and everything's gone that way, so to speak.
And we get a rebate.
And we get a rebate.
Yeah.
And we see a nice return on investment over about 3 years.
Excellent, thank you.
Motion would be appropriate.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve, make sure this is the right one, to approve Resolution 23059, which is approving financing for the library lighting and citywide access control upgrades in the amount of $34,189.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, will the clerk take the roll, please?
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers.
Yes.
Googan.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bonnie?
Good evening, Mayor Hammond and City Council members. Tonight, I'm asking for approval of Resolution 23-060 to set the public hearing date and the high dollar amount for the 23-24 financial plan. I'm going to run through the highlights of what this resolution includes. Please ask questions at any time. The majority of the slides in this presentation are in regards to the general fund. The proposed plan includes 2 additional firefighters that were approved after the current budget was finalized and are being paid for through Cooney County Emergency Medical.
Bonnie,
Yeah.
can you get it up on the screen? Thank
Oh,
you.
shoot.
It's
Sorry,
okay.
I don't know how that
See
happened.
it, yeah.
Thank you.
There you
Hang on. Hang on. Okay. Somebody in the back helped out there. Let's try this again. It was on my screen. All right. Okay, so this plan includes a 3% increase to property tax revenue that the city receives and includes new growth of $224,000. The total decrease to revenues in the general fund is $1.7 million, and we'll go through that in more detail. The total increase to wages and benefits is $2.7 million. Total increase to services and supplies is $167,000, and the decrease to capital outlay is $3.26 million. The increase to the use of fund balance year over year is $2.38 million. This preliminary plan also includes a 3% increase to health insurance expense, 4.5% COLA for sworn police officers, a 3% COLA for fire personnel, 5% COLA for LCEA exempt and non-represented employees and police support staff. It also includes $2,500 bonuses for LCEA and non-represented employees, as well as exempt employees at a 17 and below pay grade.
So, Vonnie, you said, Mr. Mayor, Vonnie, you said 3% increase to health insurance?
Yes.
Okay, I thought that was, last time I'd heard, maybe I heard wrong, I thought that was flat.
It's less than that. The 3% was the increase, but then we also had people that opted out and people that had fewer dependents. So it is a smaller number, and I talk about that later on too.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead, please.
Yeah. There has been a few changes from the preliminary budget to the resolution, so I want to go through those with you. The first change is to new growth. We received the information needed from the county to calculate the new growth this week, and it was $66,000 less than what had been projected. General fund balance use was increased by $268,000. Beginning balances in other funds increased by $288,000, or $45,000, sorry. Okay, I lost my spot. $175,000. Federal grant revenue was increased by $288,000 in the general fund and $45,000 in library and cemetery funds to cover the cost of negotiated bonuses. There was a slight decrease in the projected amount coming from Kootenai County Emergency Medical of $11,000, and interest revenue was increased by $63,000 in the utility funds and $1,300 in the cemetery fund. So those are all the changes from the preliminary budget to the resolution that's before you. Changes to the expenditure side from the preliminary budget to the resolution are all related to negotiations with LCEA and include employees moving from a 9-year pay scale max to a 7-year max. This cost is estimated to be $36,000. Bonuses will cost approximately $550,000, and moving the COLA from 4% to 5% will cost about $183,000. This slide lists the major swings in revenue year over year. The large decrease in grant revenue of $4 million is causing the revenue decrease year over year. This decrease is due to the 22-23 budget, including ARPA funds of $3.5 million that were for the police building expansion and $600,000 for the street shop remodel, along with various other equipment purchases in the current budget that are being purchased with ARPA funding. The other large swing is the increase in the use of fund balance to balance a budget of $2.4 million. More details are on that later in this presentation. This slide shows the recent history of the city's assessed valuation. In the last 10 years, the city has jumped in value by almost $9 billion. The biggest increase has been between fiscal year 21-22 and 22-23, when it almost doubled. This jump and some changes that the legislature has made is what's causing the new growth to generate less each year. As the valuation goes up, the levy rate that the valuation is multiplied by drops. In fiscal year 14-15, $105 million in new growth generated $670,000. For fiscal year 23-24, new growth of $101 million, which is only $4 million less than the 14-15, generates $224,000. New legislation limits the amount of new growth that can generate tax dollars to 90%, and also requires that a preliminary levy rate be used to compute new growth instead of the previous year's levy rate. In fiscal year 22-23, that equated to $163,000 less to the city. This slide breaks out the different categories that make up the $2.7 million increase in wages and benefits. The 1.7 million COLA increases include the extra 3% for police and extra 1% for fire that were not included in the final budget for the current fiscal year, as negotiations weren't finalized until after the budget had to be approved. The preliminary budget includes a potential 3% increase to health insurance of $145,000. This is being offset by a $77,000 decrease in health insurance expenses due to employees opting out of the city's health insurance and also new hires with no or fewer dependents. The net increase to health insurance expense is $68,000, which is great news for this budget cycle. Another thing to note on this slide is the changes to the PERSI rates. On July 1st, public safety PERSI rates increased from 12.28% to 13.26%, and may increase again on July 1st of 2024 to 13.98%. General employee PERSI rates dropped on July 1st from 11.94% to 11.18%, and may go back up to 11.96% on July 1st to 2024. This caused a total increase to the city's general fund of $158,000 for 23-24. Getting ahead of myself. This schedule breaks down the wage and benefit increases year over year by department. Public safety increases amount to $2.27 million of the $2.7 million total increase. Even with a 5% COLA for LCEA and exempt positions and scheduled bonuses, the elimination of other positions, turnover, and the decrease in the PERSI rate for general employees brings the budgeted increase year over year for LCA and exempt employees to an increase of $449,000. This slide lists the positions that were added into the current budget but have not been filled and are not included in the resolution for 23-24. They include 2 positions in streets, 1 in admin, 1 in parks, 1 in municipal services, and 1 police support staff position for a total decrease of $483,000. Let's talk a little bit about your fund balance. This slide breaks down the use of fund balance in the proposed budget and shows expenses that we often consider as one-time expenses. The following capital expenses are included in the proposed resolution: $31,000 in building maintenance, $18,000 in municipal services, $1.5 million for the completion of the police budget expansion, $751,000 for police vehicles, $250,000 in streets for equipment, and $500,000 in streets for completion of the street building remodel. $107,000 in equipment for parks, and a transfer of prior year designated highway user fees in the general fund to the street capital projects fund. $1.6 million of these expenses are proposed to be budgeted from ARPA funds, $1.5 for the police building expansion and $100,000 for the street department building remodel. The remaining $400,000 for the street department remodel is proposed to come from funds that were designated at the end of 21-22, and $1.9 million of designated fund balance from highway user fees is proposed to be moved from the general fund to the street capital project funds for 15th Street and Atlas. Capital items in building maintenance, municipal services, streets, parks, and police vehicles are proposed to come from undesignated fund balance, along with $850,000 coming from fund balance for ongoing wage and benefit expenses. A total of $2 million is proposed to come from undesignated fund balance to fund the preliminary financial plan. This next slide breaks down the effect of this proposed budget on the undesignated fund balance. The preliminary budget calls for the use of $4.3 million of fund balance. Of that amount, $2.3 million would come from funds that were designated at the end of 21-22. The amount coming from undesignated fund balance is $2 million. At the end of 21-22, the fund balance in the general fund included $6.4 million of designated fund balance, and the undesignated fund balance was $11.8 million. We've talked a lot in the past about the standard for where the fund balance should be. Sometimes it's shown as no less than 2 months of revenues, and sometimes as no less than 15% of expenses. I usually look at 16.7% of revenues and expenses as if we're trying to cover 2 months. 2 months divided by 12 in the year is 16.7. At 9/30/2022, the undesignated fund balance was $11.8 million, which was 26% of actual expenses for that year, and 24.3% of actual revenues. If the fund balance is projected to remain the same for the end of 22-23, the current fiscal year. And we project that 2 million will be used to fund 23-24, and do the same calculation of fund balance to projected revenues and expenses. In the preliminary budget, those ratios end up being 18.4% of revenues and 17% of expenses. If the council decides to not take the 3% increase, the ratio would drop to 17% of revenues and 15.6% of expenses. In order to fund the wages and benefits that have been negotiated, the city needs another ongoing revenue source of $850,000, even if the 3% is asked for. The employee contract schedule increases for 24-25. That will need at least an additional $1 million on top of the $850 that is needed for 23-24. This last slide lists the things that department heads had included in their budgets when submitted to finance that were removed in the preliminary budget. The majority of these are the 6 positions added last fiscal year that have not been filled, and a $250,000 increase to the overlay chip seal budget. The additional position that was asked for in the general fund this year was an assistant city attorney. That position has not been added to the preliminary budget. And I am available for questions.
Woody?
Oh, man, so many big words.
Sorry.
It's okay. So could you explain to me the ongoing funding out of fund balance? In other words, we're going to use ongoing money out of fund balance to keep things going. Is that what I understood?
No, what fund balance is not ongoing money.
Right.
It's like your savings account. So
Right.
yes, we're dipping into that fund balance to pay for ongoing expenses in this next budget.
Okay, we don't normally do that.
We try, well, lots of times we do budget that. What's happened in the last few years that has saved us is the fact that we've been understaffed. So it's my understanding that police department is fully staffed today, probably not tomorrow, but they're getting closer. So yes, if the police department is fully staffed, we will use all of that budget and we won't be able to keep the fund balance where it is. It will start to go down.
Okay. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Bonnie, would you mind putting the last slide up just so I can look at it? I really don't have a question right now. And then just a note, I'm not seeing this presentation, which is amazing, by the way, so thank you, in our packet. So I can just look at this while the others ask questions.
Oh, okay.
I think it's in the books, but it's for some reason not loaded on our computer.
Oh.
So that's probably not a you question, so.
And I'm sorry, I'm looking at this same thing. I'm looking at the city website, and it looks like there's some slides that changed from what's on the city website to
There are a
here.
few things that, yes, changed, because I was getting numbers from the county, and I wanted you to have the most up-to-date ones, and I wanted the resolution to be correct that's going into the paper, so.
Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bonnie, let's talk about the annexation fund. So, and we mentioned this during the budget hearing. So, when Coeur came in, we got $1 million. Woo! And if I understand, according to the one slide, we are transferring from that fund $165,000, and then and that's it.
$165,000 more than last year.
More than last year.
Yeah.
So in the annexation fund, the money from Coeur, where is that?
So it's in the annexation fee fund. There's about $1 million in there. We're looking at using 500,000 of it to fund this budget, and then another 500,000 of it next year to fund next year's budget.
Okay, and we could use all $1 million of that to fund this year's budget, which would lower the property tax
Well,
increase.
The hard part about that is then you're going to need more money next year, and you don't have the ability to generate it from property taxes because you're limited to 3% increase.
Yeah,
so
well,
you'll
I'm
be-
just talking about this year. I might not be here next year. So for this year, yeah, so what was the reason behind not doing it? Was just having it next year? Because it seems like that's just kicking the can down the road because you're going to have the same problem in '26.
Correct, but if you take 3% this year, you can take another 3% next year, and another 3% the next year in order to fund all of the increases that you have to wages and
I
benefits.
just don't like beating up the taxpayer that way. So,
Unfortunately, you have benefit and wage negotiations that have been approved that have to be funded somehow.
I know, and that's why I want to look at using that full annexation fund to fund it. So I would favor taking all of the annexation money and putting that in this year's budget to offset the property tax increase. I know it was unexpected revenue, but that's my decision to make, and that's the decision I would like to make. I don't know how the rest of council feels about that.
Your decision is.
Dan?
Yeah, I would just give some input, and I realize it's too early to probably be able to put some figures, but I was kind of reviewing again briefly from about 2 weeks ago that Governor Little announced in the state, tax commission, and, thought we'd have about, $200 million of property tax relief, and now there's an extra $100 million, and in reading the details, it's going to be tied to what school district levies and things get offset, but it said that, typical person, 10-12% of reduction, that's going to vary. I'm hoping by, and this is a high water mark tonight, I'm hoping by then maybe we can, dig into that a little bit more, unless you already have, and with school, and be able to say, well, yeah, these are some things that are going to cost more, and actually, these are some offsets to the property tax bill that, as I understand it, will show up as early as this November's statement. So, that's something I'd like a little more clarification, just so we've got, kind of all of the news, the good news along with the hard.
Correct. And the state has not released how that formula will work.
Okay.
It sounds like a lot of it would go to the school districts, but there's nothing in it yet that says who gets what, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
Christie's next.
Thank you. And I remember you saying that it could be quite some time before we know what exactly that is. Bonnie, I would say Bonnie, but council, I don't mind setting the high water mark, but we're all going to have to work on this between now and then and see what we can do to decrease it. I tend to really look at interestingly in the fact that we could use the annexation fees to decrease that amount. Also, the fund balance. I realize we're looking at taking a big chunk, and that's not ongoing, but even taking that chunk, if I have this right, we would still be at 17%. And if I recall, there's been years in the past where I wasn't here, but I think the council got it all the way down to even 9%. It's not the best way to operate, but I think we could actually take a little more and maybe go back down to 15 or 14, because that's still acceptable. So I'll be looking for those opportunities and any other way that we can impact the budget. I'm not opposed to a tax increase to keep the city services moving forward, especially when it comes to public safety. But if there is a way that we don't have to, I'm obviously going to look at that too.
Can I make a comment?
I appreciate it.
on
Yeah,
that?
please do.
So if you're short 800,000 just to cover salaries and wages this year, and you take that one-time money to cover that, you're then short another 1.8 million next year because your wages are going to continue to go up. So I would not, I just want to make sure that I say this, I would not recommend that you do that.
Thank you.
Bonnie, can you go to the slide that shows the assessed value increase or decrease?
For the new growth or the totals?
Yeah, the new growth.
The new growth?
So the new growth, I'm having a hard time reading that. We don't have that in our book.
Oh, I thought that one should have been in the one that got, oh, she emailed it out on Monday, so yes, it would not be in the book. I think Renata emailed it on Monday.
Not this slide, though.
What?
I don't know.
This slide
Well, the
wasn't-
point is, either way, that we've grown substantially, but there's no, that the county's saying that there's no increase in value, basically.
Well, what's happened is because they have like, all of the houses that were already there, they increased the value of those so much that the levy rate has fallen like to a third of what it was before. So now that when you have that new growth, it's calculated by that new levy rate, and it only amounts to 224,000 as opposed to 800 and, And that new growth from the higher levy rates is what was able to sustain us in the past. And we just don't have that anymore.
So the question that goes back to Dan's comments, and that is, in the past, even if when you read the paper, it says we're raising taxes 3%. If we take the 3% based upon actual growth numbers, it could be no actual increase for the individual property taxpayer.
Correct.
But I'm not sure where we are with that right now relative to the change in levy rate. What does that mean?
Well, the 3% generates $700,000, and that's spread over the entire valuation of the city, which the entire valuation is estimated right now at $12 billion. So, yes, it doesn't affect each individual property owner. It's only $700,000 across all of that. So it does not affect the, when you say 3%, everyone thinks their taxes are going up 3%, but no, the revenue that the city receives is going up 3%, which is then spread over that entire tax base.
Dan?
Complicated.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the problem here in this state is assessments, and that we have a basically unhinged method of assessing home values, which is, mine jumped 40% one year. So my property taxes went up, and that was a year the city took zero, interestingly enough. So it's an assessment problem. The other problem we have is our legislature, and I don't have enough time to really go into the detail about how much I dislike what they do, but they did a couple of things to really hose us over. They capped our new growth at 90%, and when our urban renewal district retired, instead of us getting $3 million in new revenue, which would have more than handled all this situation, we got $1 million. So they did a number on us, which I really don't like, and they're doing it again. And this is beyond our control. I wish we had home rule. I wish we could do our own budgets. We can't. Christy mentioned that she would like to work on the budget some more. Troy, is there any opportunity for us to work on the budget some more, or have a meeting or anything? I mean, what is the next step, I guess, is there's going to be a hearing set on September 5th where we're going to actually vote on a budget.
Correct. The financial plan you've seen includes all of the one-time opportunities to go into fund balance to pay the capital items. And so one could say we could lessen some of that capital, but that's all one time. Our whole discussion here tonight hit all the high points, or I would call them low points. You have grown your city and doubled it in value. Your levy rate dropped like a rock coming down from an 11-story building. Boom, look at what that levy rate is. None of us forecasted that. That was the same time our urban renewal district closed, which is a whole bunch of money we had looked forward to. Happy to meet with council, happy to talk with the mayor on budget, but from our desk, all of your ongoing expenses are tied up in these awesome contracts for our team members. We have covered, through this plan, everything else from your one-time money. You've got the discussion you had on annexation fees. As I hope you can appreciate, I'm appointed, not elected. You have a very challenging job. We need to have cash flow in order to be comfortable. And so we are looking for cash flow to make up this difference. I wish we knew exactly what is going to happen with the dollars that come from the state. That would be a good topic. We don't have anything at this moment. So I guess I'm saying there's not a whole lot I can do to help with the need for cash flow.
As soon as you get that state tax number, could you send us a heads up on that and let us know what it is, if that can help fix the situation that generally, I mean, I know it fluctuates, but it tends to go up. Sales tax was up a few years ago, which really saved our butts, and I really like that. Also, impact fees is something that I've been pressing for the past, as long as I've been in office, and I think, that would help us a lot with this capital improvement stuff, and a lot of the fund balance that we tend to be eating up now could be saved through impact fees. I also got to say, this is my 12th budget, and the very first budget that we had, I heard the same thing, that it was a dire situation. We're having to go into fund balance. This is unsustainable. And it kind of wears after a while in that it's just the same thing again and again. And yet, every single year that I've been here, that we've always had surplus at the end of the year. So there's a little incredulity up here regarding the warnings, and that's all I'm going to say.
Well, again, though, I think we have to, I wish the paper wouldn't say we're raising taxes 3%, because if you look at the levy rate is really either dropped or remained steady. But if your values have gone way up and the levy rate, it remains steady, then you're not going to be paying as much in taxes. Well, that's not quite true.
No.
The levy rate should be dropping more.
It's, again, they've monkeyed with it at the legislative level to try to,
They've screwed around with it so much you can't even understand it anymore.
And I wish they'd just leave us alone, but,
Well, I guess the bottom line is still that it would be helpful for me to see how this really plays out right now, as with the information we have, how this plays out for a $400,000, $600,000, $800,000 home relative to what they were paying for city taxes last year and this year.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you. I was going to ask for that. You've provided that in the past, and it's always been very helpful. Also, what you've provided in the past was about a 7-year history of this council taking a tax increase, and I know it's been very rare. This council's been incredibly responsible, even long before I got here. And so that history would be helpful.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Thanks. I just wanted to be clear, Bonnie, that just to boil it down, what you're talking about here is with this particular budget, and this is just the high water mark, there could be some things that change within here. But I'm hearing Troy say we don't have an opportunity to discuss that as a council until the next hearing. Is that correct? There is no opportunity for us to get together with any creative ideas or go through any of these other possibilities?
That is a possibility. No, I'm not saying we can't. I'm just
Okay.
saying that as staff, unless we want to, freeze positions or something else, we've used the dollars as described. We're looking at cash flow to cover personnel costs.
And I think we kind of have had explained to us, there's been an unprecedented set of circumstances here with very large increases in employee agreements, with some of the legislative issues, with some of the caps that we had. So I get all that. I just feel like there should be more time to delve into this, because your plan, regardless if who could votes no on tax increase, regardless, you can vote yes to fund a contract, but no to the tax increase. I get all that. But your plan says it's 3% for the next number of years in order to catch up with what these contracts that have been placed before us are. And that is, if you went into that annexation $1 million, that is just delaying the inevitable, that it isn't still going to balance. And so
Correct. So
I'm
when-
looking
when-
at wanting some clarity on what your view of the future is, because I'm hearing recommending don't dip into your savings account this far because it's not going to replenish itself.
Correct. And when we're doing the budget, we're looking at all of the positions that we have approved. So what saved us in the last 4 or 5 years is the fact that we have not been fully staffed. And that's why every year, yes, I say to you, we can't do this. And then it comes out okay because the police department saves $1 million because they don't have enough people. So if that changes, then that's when you are going to
Well,
get
maybe
in
we have
fight.
to look at cutting some people in positions citywide. If this is where we're at, and we have to be competitive with wages with other cities and have these increases so we get the talent we need, maybe we have to look at programs and positions.
Dan?
I appreciate all of this input. I think what I'm also hearing from Troy and the staff is, if we were to call a special workshop between now and that budget hearing I don't know if 2 weeks difference or something is really, it sounds like there's not likely going to have a lot of information, and we tend to have those workshops like in the middle of the day when, most people can't come or tune in or something versus, that's exactly what the public the public budget hearing is for. Now, we hardly get anybody, but we get, a few faithful come, but that's the time to come, and I think that's a time for us to have, okay, if we've really got to get down and wrestle with, the bare financial facts, that's what it is. But to me, it seems like when we're this far along and we've got all kinds of the data pieces, what's going to change in 2 weeks, that's the time, it seems to me, that we really need to have that out there, and whether it's uncomfortable discussion or whatever, that's the time to really have it. That's my 2 cents, so.
Well, the main point of this discussion tonight is to set that high water mark. There's also, could be an opportunity for the council to do a workshop prior to the public hearing. That's still over a month away. So I will work with Troy on that and see if we can't put something together.
Can I also encourage, if any of you would want to stop by my office, I'm always available to go through all of this with you and help explain it, or.
Well, I think that some of the comfort could be brought forth if we could see how this actually plays out in terms of the average taxpayer.
Local houses, yeah.
And Vonnie, I'd really appreciate if we could get this whole slide presentation
Yeah,
sent
I will
back
email it out,
that-
yeah.
with the current.
Yeah, and I
ones.
will include the 7-year history of the taxes that were taken. I'll email that out tomorrow.
Thank you.
So how about a motion?
And I can also do some scenarios of like a $400,000, $500,000 house with this preliminary levy rate that's now been calculated, and I'll email that out to you.
We understand that, yeah.
Great.
Anybody want to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 23-060, setting a public hearing for September 5th, 2023, and setting the high dollar amount of $130,510,617 in expenditures for the 2023-2024 fiscal year financial plan annual appropriation.
Second.
I have a motion second. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, will the clerk take the roll, please?
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller. Aye. McEvers,
Yes.
Guggen,
No.
English.
Yes.
Motion carries. Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We are adjourned.